welcome to Donor Dialogue. Each month, we will bring you a conversation with a community leader about the current state of philanthropy, the donor experience, and insights into the donor and volunteer mindset. I'm Lindsay Blok, Senior Vice President of CCS Fundraising, an executive team member serving in Southern California and across the Southwest. CCS has been a strategic partner with nonprofit organizations for more than 70 years, raising funds, planning and implementing fundraising strategies, and impacting the world through philanthropy. After working with nonprofit organizations for 15 years, I'm particularly fascinated by the donor perspective, how our volunteers view nonprofit organizations and philanthropy, and how we can all work together to improve our communities. Today, my guest is Arturo Perez. Art is Community Affairs Team Lead for U.S. Bank in Arizona, Las Vegas, and New Mexico. He is responsible for the development, coordination, and management of community development and relations activities over several states and throughout the Southwest. In his role, Art collaborates with community groups focusing on affordable housing, small business development, capacity building, and financial education. The primary focus of his work is serving community needs within low to moderate income neighborhoods and meeting corporate Community Reinvestment Act objectives. Community involvement isn't just part of Art's job, it's part of who he is. He currently serves on the board of directors of affordable housing nonprofit Trellis and is on the board of directors of Junior Achievement of Arizona. He's the past chair of the Arizona Community Reinvestment Collaborative, a member of the advisory board of New Pathways for Youth, and member of the outreach committee for Clearinghouse CDFI, a member of the 2021 class of Value Leadership, and an emeritus member of the board of directors of Chico Inc. Art, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, Lindsay, thanks for having me, and I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah. Well, Art, you're involved with so many different organizations. Can you tell me about how you've become involved with some of these and what your motivations have been for being involved?
Thanks, Lindsay. I come by my engagement with the community, I guess, from genetics. My father was really involved in the community, and so it seems to be something that I always did. Professionally, I'd started when I was working in an area that a coworker of mine said, "Hey, can you come to a meeting for me? You work with numbers. We need somebody to look at some figures, and it's a real small group, etc." And so I thought I'd go to the meeting thinking, "Oh, this is just going to be something I'm going to help in for an hour or so and go on my merry little way." And then I ended up somehow at the end of the meeting, I was the board treasurer, which was a very interesting concept. But it was a great organization. It's the one I met you through, Chico. So I served on that board for about 20 years, and from there just made a lot of other connections. And in my role at the U.S. Bank, I am lucky enough to be able to engage with nonprofits and with community organizations of all kinds. And really through that, I'm able to engage with the community. I like doing it. I don't do as much as I would like, and I try to balance work life as much as possible.
You've worked a lot in the affordable housing space, and you're working with a lot of low to moderate income neighborhoods. Can you share with us why that's one of your passions?
Sure. I don't think you can overstate how much and how important it is to have a roof over your home, over your head, a place to call home. If you know that your kids are going to be going to the bus stop at this one place every time, that's a huge burden off of a parent's shoulders. And so having that safe and affordable place to live it just can't be overstated in terms of how much that helps to make your life easier. And also it is absolutely the surest way to build wealth for a family. There's been statistics over the last few years, and I'm going to get these wrong, so you're going to have to, pardon me, but I think Black families have about 10% of the wealth of white families, and Hispanic families have about 30% of the wealth of white families. And that all comes from the fact that they have no equity in their neighborhoods, in their homes. And if they're much more likely to be renters. And if you can have that home that you build or that you own, pardon me, and that you are living in, it is the surest way to begin to build wealth, because you have that security. You then can go on to other aspects seeking a job or getting a job that's better than the one you have for whatever reason. Maybe you want to be able to use your equity for some kind of entrepreneurial work to start a small business of some kind. All those things stem from the fact that you have a safe and affordable place to live.
Wow. Very systematic. And, with all of the events of 2020, and this new focus on systemic inequalities, have you shifted how you think about philanthropy in relation to those inequalities, or, maybe organizations that you've worked with have shifted their perspective?
Lindsay, we were lucky enough at US Bank we were able to respond to, there were some serious issues happening, obviously, with race and racial inequality in 2020. The US Bank Foundation responded quickly and allocated some funds to address racial inequality throughout the country and throughout our footprint. Within the Phoenix area where I primarily work, we were lucky enough to get some of those funds, and I engaged with some nonprofit organizations to help develop leadership for people of color, because to me, within the Arizona market, in corporations, in nonprofits, and government agencies, there just seems to be a lack of leadership of people of color, and I wanted to try and help develop them. So we thought we'll start at the bottom, at the grassroots level, with organizations that are in the leadership development space, try and get some cohorts of leaders of people of color through these programs, and then get them implemented into the organizations. We also worked with Trellis, where I am a proud board member, in establishing a pool for down payment assistance for their clients are primarily people of color, and they work in neighborhoods that are primarily populated by people of color, and help them. This down payment assistance pool helps close the gap sometimes for them to be able to afford a house or not afford a house, maybe buy it this year instead of next year, that kind of thing. And again, as it goes back to, I said earlier, that's the surest way to build wealth and build security for families.
What role do you think philanthropy plays in either reinforcing or overcoming some of the systemic inequalities in our society?
So philanthropy can do something, but it can't be an end all and be all. There's, so many needs and so varied needs in the market. Philanthropy can absolutely contribute to making people's lives better. You find good organizations that you can get behind that are doing the right thing, trying to advance racial equality, trying to advance other causes that are, quite frankly, there's a need in the market that is surpasses almost what any philanthropic organization can do. So we try to do our part. I think philanthropy in general is so needed, but I don't want to make it that it's going to be the answer to anything, because it won't be. It's going to be part of a holistic toolkit that anybody can put together. One of the things that I've been working on in Arizona, and actually in Nevada as well, we're starting to put it together. There's an organization we we resurrected an organization of community reinvestment officers within the state of other financial institutions. And we kind of got together as a collaboration. So we're not competing one with another. So, I work for US Bank. There's organizations from my competitors from all across the state. And we met and got together and kind of pooled our ideas. It's like, what organizations are you guys working with? Which ones are we with? You're working with, who do you like working in this space and that space? We don't support every nonprofit. We just can't. And finding out what our peers are finding success with and who they're finding success with, we thought that was really very beneficial to us in making our funding decisions and making our engagement decisions. Sometimes it's not just funding, but it's also, volunteerism or maybe other types of engagement. And that was something that was really beneficial for us in Arizona. And we're launching it in Nevada this year. So I'm excited about that. It's something, all of the people in the community reinvestment space that are work for financial institutions, they're really trying to do the right thing. We understand we're competing with each other. We're not trying to step on each other's toes, but this is just a way to pool our resources, mostly for knowledge. And it's been really beneficial.
So interesting. Art, with your role with the bank and then your own personal investment in philanthropy, how do you think about those two areas of your life?
It's funny. I'm trying to think. I don't know. They just seem like it's it's almost like, that's what, how do you think about your right arm and your left arm? I mean, they're just kind of there, I don't think about them being distinct or different. I mean, I know that there's been times in my family's like, oh my God, do you have another meeting? Are you doing this again? It's like, yeah, okay, yes, I do. They're, they tease, but um, it is just something that I don't think about it being a different part of my life. It is just part of my life. It's just the way I am. I don't think I'll ever be different in terms of engaging with the community. Now, I'm lucky enough right now to have some decision-making process for philanthropy, and that's not always going to be the case. I'm sure that sooner or later I'll move on to another aspect of my life. Today, I try to do that. I try to encourage people to give to an organization if they feel it is something that is near and dear to their heart. And I know Americans, by and large, are very giving people, and so I'm encouraged by that at least. So it would be different. One of these days, I'm going to move on to another aspect of my life, and I guess that'll be a challenge I'll have to overcome when I get there.
Yeah. How do you balance your family life, professional life, and other things all together? It sounds like a lot of meetings.
Sometimes it can be a lot of meetings. No, I'm lucky enough that most of the times the meetings are, during lunch or early in the morning, and I can take it from work. And during the pandemic, my goodness, it's a whole different environment. Everybody's meeting virtually. So sometimes that can be a little bit hard because you're in front of the computer all day. You and I are meeting via computer chat now. This is a way of life anymore. And in some cases, that's been great. Now, because, I finished my meeting, if, with you, I can go downstairs and have dinner with my family. And that's great. I don't have to commute back from wherever the meeting was being held. Now, on the other hand, I miss those connections that I'm making with people in the nonprofit space, where I go out and see, okay, we've been talking about your program. You've been trying to do this. How's it actually being put in place? Are you, engaging? Are you finding success? Kind of sometimes you got to see it. You got to kick the tires, I guess, every once in a while, and to see what actually an organization's doing, what they're not doing. And so much of that can be done virtually, obviously, but sometimes you really do need to get out and see what's happening on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Have there been any organizations that have done some neat things to help keep you engaged over this last year? Something unique?
Well, yeah, there've been a few. So I had mentioned before that the foundation had come up with some racial equality monies. There was other earlier in the year we had done something called for the actually, now I'm trying to think. I'm going to get my timing wrong. So earlier in the year, later in the year. Anyway, we did some other funding round for something called the Rebuild and Transform Fund, which is really kind of a cool thing. We after the pandemic, we thought to ourselves, okay, there's going to be some organizations that are really struggling. What can we do to help them? So I talked to the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, who are here in Arizona, about what they were trying to do for their members. And they'd come up with a cool little program where they wanted to be able to give little $1,000 micro grants, to their members that were struggling. These are tiny little businesses. So what they were wondering is, like, how do I make payment for rent next month? How do I make payment for my staff next month? And maybe it's just a staff of one other person besides the owner. They're not even trying to pay themselves; they're trying to pay somebody else. So the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce came up with a program that they would give these micro grants to people for just 6 weeks. So it was just like, a band-aid to get you out until you could figure out how are you going to manage through the pandemic. Get your ducks in a row, figure out how you're going to change or shift your business model to be able to address the needs of your customers, be able to be an ongoing entity. At the time we were still trying to figure out what's going to happen with the Paycheck Protection Program. And sometimes these businesses, maybe they're not sophisticated enough to be able to apply for it, and those monies dried up quickly, as you know. So these little stopgap measures that other organizations did, and not just the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, but other organizations throughout the country did these kinds of little things. I mean, I think I just thought they were really cool, and so I was happy that we were able to support that.
Yeah, that's fantastic, right? And now we're coming into this new year.
Oh goodness, yeah, it's a whole new year. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you're looking forward to this new year, but also looking back at the last year, do you think there are going to be some key differences for nonprofits as they think about 2021, whether that's planning or philanthropy or programs? It's going to be different?
it's going to be the big question. So I've sat on a couple of finance committees and some boards of directors of organizations, and one of the things we're trying to figure out is, like, nobody knows exactly when the pandemic's going to ease. There's not like a magic date. Hey, July 14th, everybody, things are going to go back to normal. That's not going to happen. And, quite frankly, corporate America, took it on the, how do you want to say, they did not have that great of a year last year, so there's maybe not be as much money this year to be able to support organizations. And that's just the fact of life. I think nonprofits are going to have to be nimble. They have to figure out, how do we take a model and build for earned income that we can try and generate revenue one way or another. I think that probably 2022 will be a better year for nonprofits, only because by that time the economy will start turning around, and hopefully people will feel a little more comfortable going out, meeting in spaces, and that kind of thing. I think 2021 is going to be quite challenging.
Yeah, interesting. Well, if you could go back to March or April of 2020, is there anything you might do differently, or advice you might give differently to organizations you work with?
I don't know. I remember at the time, so in March of 2020, everybody was like, okay, we're not sure what it's going to do. I mean, I know for us, initially we talked, okay, people are going to work, 1 or 2 days a week from the office. The rest of the time you can work at home. And then it turned into, well, okay, just 1 day a week, and then maybe 25% of you. And then it turned out after a while, it was like, okay, you know what? This is bad stuff. Everybody stay home as much as possible, And so you got to think to yourself, so a lot of those nonprofits are working, they're in the front lines. They're not able to do what a lot of corporate America can. And I wouldn't say everybody, even at US Bank, a lot of our people are in the front lines. They're working in the branches and are dealing with customers on a day-in, day-out basis. I don't know what I would do differently. I think a lot of the times, you have to, it was an unforeseen series of events. And when it's unforeseen, a lot of times you learn on the go, right? So you make a decision on Monday and maybe you find out on Tuesday that was a really bad decision. I think if everybody had the foresight, they would have, put out a plan and said, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we'll address it. But, nobody knew anything. And all in all, I really think people responded fairly well. I mean, I know people are getting a little tired of virtual learning with their kids, and I can totally understand that. If I had young children, I have no hair, but I would be pulling something out. But it'd be a difficult thing for all nonprofits, and especially those that are trying to work with, they rely upon engagement of corporate America, and whenever that engagement is not always there, just because of the environment, there's a struggle.
Yeah. Well, and opportunities to engage individuals too, right?
Yeah.
So chance to meet someone at an event, or be introduced to a partner or a colleague.
Or even large volunteer engagements, right? So, you have a group of employees that like to volunteer, whatever, wherever, there's a large gathering of people. That stuff went out the window. And somebody says, okay, well, we can do this virtually. And a lot of times you can, and sometimes you cannot. And, so you got to shift. And the nonprofits got to figure, okay, how do I get this model to work whenever that physical interaction is not there? It took them a long time to, well, some faster, some other, than others, and to figure out how to get that model to work.
Right, exactly. There's been some creative solutions, so.
Absolutely. There've been some really cool things that people have done. Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Well, I'm curious for you personally, what's something that's been challenging as part of the last year, and something that's been unexpectedly beneficial?
So I got 2 sons, and they're older. So last year, one of them was a senior, and when he went home for spring break, he never went back to school in person. It was all done virtually. So it was weird that he finished up his last last half of the semester at home. But quite frankly, he adjusted and got through and graduated, and that was great. So that was something I really celebrate. My other son is still in high school. He's a senior this year, right? So now it's been almost a full year of virtual learning, and it's getting old. It's getting old that he would like to see his friends, and he would like to be able to interact in person with and make those human connections, and that can be a little challenging. So it was great to see one of them finish up with school and get on with being an adult in his life, and the other one is at this now wants is chomping at the bit to be able to do that. But doesn't want to finish up his senior year without having seen any of the friends that he's gone to school with for 11 years. So, I can totally get behind that. Maybe more than 11 years. Now that I think about it, those preschool and all kindergarten, all those other things. So, yeah.
So you've got one on each end of the spectrum, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The one that's starting his life is, started his life and got a job and is trying to think what he's going to do with the rest of his life. But it's interesting.
Good luck to him. I'd like to conclude our conversation today by asking you for one piece of advice you would give to an organization leader, an executive director, a CEO, a president, or a board chair.
Well, I don't think it would come as a surprise to anyone, but to me, the one piece of advice is you got to be nimble. You got to be able to change directions fast. If this last year has taught us nothing, it's that nothing remains the same and nothing is static ever. Just when you get comfortable, life's going to come up and slap you upside the head. You got to be able to say, okay, this organization is working this way. How do we work if something comes out of left field? That's why I think it's really important whenever organizations put together these strategic plans and really talk about, okay, this is what we're going to do the next 5 years. We want to do here, here, here. That's all great, but you got to remember that that's just like guardrails, not necessarily the map, because you never know if you're going to be over here or over here, and you got to make sure you're nimble enough to adjust and nimble enough to adapt to what is happening around you, what the market's happening around you, and what the needs of your customers and clients are. They might change, and you might be. So you got to be able to be nimble enough to adjust and meet those needs.
That's a great point. Well, Art, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always wonderful to spend time with you and talk with you, and thanks for sharing your thoughts with us.
Sure, Lindsay, and thank you for reaching out. And I'm glad you touched base with me. It'd been a few years since we chatted, and glad to see you again.
Yeah, as always.